Hey everyone, welcome to the lab. We're going to do some experiments today. We're going to paint this spray can. We're going to put together this robot. It's a spray can robot. We're going to make it come alive. So I hope you do this project along with me. I can't wait to see what you guys have to say about it. I think it'll be a lot of fun. So let's get into it.
First things first, what I like to do is sketch out my idea in my sketchbook. And for this project in particular, I was going to paint it, so I want to make sure that I have the colors that I want to paint it. So I just did a few test sketches in my sketchbook, painted some cats, drew some humans, and finally decided on the direction I wanted to go with the design of my can. Now it's time to get to work on this can. I'm using this spray paint I had in my garage. I believe I got it at Hobby Lobby. It was really cheap. Don't judge me. Work with what you have. So what I'm doing right here is I'm just spray painting the base layer on of this dark gray, which I really like. And then I went in with a light purple hit. This was way better quality spray paint. This was the Molotov spray paint. Kind of spread out the sides a little bit so it was a little bit misty. Had that kind of galaxy feel to it, which is exactly what I was going for. Now I'm back in my studio. I got my can all painted. It is all dry. And what I'm going to do next is just clear coat it with this acrylic matte medium. From what I've heard is that this makes the paint stick a little better. So I'm just going to give a nice smooth clear coat on this can. Just with a regular thicker paintbrush. And then once that's dry, I'm going to take a chalk pencil, open up my sketchbook and find my reference drawing, and I am going to draw my character onto my can, just very lightly so I can paint right over it. And then now my sketch is done, my can is dry, I'm going to start getting my paints out that I'm going to use for my character. I'm using all the same paints that I tried out in my sketchbook, so I know what paints I need and I know how to mix them. So I'm getting my palette ready and I'm mixing my paints to get those ready. I'm using golden fluid acrylics. I ordered them off of Amazon. They're a little bit expensive, but they're really nice to work with. I did have some other golden acrylics laying around. For instance, my white was a heavy body acrylic, which is the opposite of the fluid acrylic. But I also got some golden open thinner that I added to that white that made it a bit more fluid like the other paints, and I didn't have a problem mixing the two. I got the same effect that I wanted to get, so I didn't see an issue. Some people might not like to work with that way, so my suggestion would be, if you care about the consistency of your paint, make sure all your paints are kind of the same viscosity, either heavy or fluid. But just working with the paints that I had, the fluid acrylics are really nice. But I had no problem working with both of them together. All of my supplies that I'm using will be linked in the description below. I'm coming in here with some black and just getting in those darker lines and those darker shadows to really make it pop. My dude is looking good right now. Now to finish it off, I'm grabbing a black Posca pen and doing some more outlines. I really want that comic book feel to this. And I am not that great at getting in on the details with a brush. So I really love these Posca pens for getting in on those fine details. And right here, I'm taking my white Posca paint pen and just adding some little highlights and some stars. And there we have it. I think this guy is done. I am ready to build the robot portion of this. So we're going to end this here because I think he looks pretty great. Now that we're getting into round 2 of the Tin Can Robot, we're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver, somewhat on the smallish side. We're going to need 1 AA battery. And this is the kit I'm using. It is the KidzRobotix Tin Can Robot kit. I'll have the link to this kit in the description. It comes with instructions and all these various parts. Parts are listed on the back of the box, which is nice. So I'm just going to lay out the parts just to make sure we have everything that it's supposed to have. So as we get into the construction of our robot, I just want to say that the instruction manual is really easy to follow and pretty informative. They separated the instructions into different sections, and then they have steps within those sections, which was very helpful. This first section that we're working on right now is assembling the battery component. So we took the large body plate, and on one side there are 2 metal eyelets, and we slotted the body rings into each side. And then we fixed each of these rings with a screw on the other side of the body plate. So when you start putting this together, you could kind of see where things go together. It's pretty easy to see, and the instructions tell you pretty much exactly where they go. So this is what I'm doing. I'm slotting these rings into the pegs, and I'm screwing them to the body plate. Once those rings are in place, we're going to want to turn that body plate over and install the battery casing. So what we're going to want to do is take these wires and thread them through these 2 smaller square holes in the body plate. The black wire goes through the right hand hole, and the red wire goes through the left hand hole. Then we're going to want to make sure that the battery case is lowered onto the body plate so that the pegs in the battery case slot into the holes in the body plate. Now we don't want to trap the wires between the battery case and the body plate. And then we will be fixing them with screws into the base. Moving on to the next section, it is the motor and the axle. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this motor component and we're going to gently thread the wires from the motor through the square holes in the body casing. We're going to thread the red wire through the right hand hole and the black wire through the left hand hole. And we're going to slot the motor into the motor housing like this. Next, we're going to take the axle and we're going to put the axle into the axle housing so that it lies in the cutouts in the top of the housing. The gear wheel on the axle should interlock with the worm gear on the motor shaft. And if you wanted to here, you can grease the axle and the gears so that it runs a little bit better. I did not do that. But after that, you can now drop the axle / motor cover over the motor and axle and push it down onto the 4 pegs on the body plate and then just screw it together. Last thing we had to do for the motor and the axle is firmly push a cam into one end of the axle and push the other cam into the other end of the axle so that the hump is on its cam points in the opposite direction to the first cam. Now that we finished the motor and axle assembly portion, the next section is connecting the wires. We need to connect the wires from the battery to the wires from the motor. And what we're going to do is push the red wire from the motor and the black wire from the battery case into one of the metal eyelets. And then we're going to press a terminal cap into the eyelet to keep the wires in place. One thing I found out that is really helpful is if you take those 2 wires and kind of twist them together so they have a really good connection. I didn't do that my first round, and then when I went to test the robot, it kept kind of dying out on me. So make sure that those wires have a really good connection, put them in the slot, and make sure that terminal cap is in a really good place and they're nice and tight. Now we're rounding out to the home stretch because the next section is completing the body rings. We're going to take one of the body rings and position it over the other body ring that is attached to the motor case at the end of the body plate. And we're going to line the holes and put the nuts and bolts on them to tighten them. And we're going to do that to the other ring. Once that's finished, we're going to move on to the next section, which is the legs, arms, and the eyes. We're going to first put the legs on. We're going to push the long leg onto the peg under the battery case and secure that with a screw. Then we're going to push the short leg onto the peg on the outside of the body ring nearest the axle and secure that with a screw. And then we're going to push these bendy straws onto each of the straw attachments on the body ring. And then if you so well choose, you can put the eyes on, whatnot. All of these things are optional. I didn't put any eyes on because my can already has eyes on it, so I thought it would be overkill. Same with these arms. I noticed that towards the end the arms are kind of annoying, although they look kind of fun. But this is optional. But I went ahead and did this part anyway. Now we're on to the final assembly section. I'm grabbing my AA battery. I'm putting it into the battery pack and putting the cover on. I'm going to switch it on for a minute just to make sure it works before I screw this in. And we're going to screw it in and we should be good to go. And here we have it. The robot portion of this project is all built and working as it should. Next step is to loosen up these rings and slip my can in. Here he is. He is ready for takeoff. So we're going to loosen these up first and then make sure the can fits correctly. Now we're tightening him back up. I'm so glad he fits. If you're going to use a different can, what you want to do is just make sure that that bottom foot is touching the ground as well as the cams. But so far so good. And he's rolling. Not going too far right now, but with a little tweaking, we got him moving across my desk. I'm pretty happy with it.